Welcome to the Juice Box with Juice Springsteen, covering the week that was in professional wrestling. And hello, everybody. Welcome to the Juice Box Royal Rumble Predictions Show here. It's not just me, and it's not just Josh Isenberg, who was with me earlier this week discussing the Royal Rumble retrospective. We have a third member of the former Chair Shot Reality group. It's the one, it's the only, it's Busted Open's own Justin LaBar. How are you doing, Justin?
I'm good. What's up, fellas? Good to be talking to you again.
Welcome back.
Good to be back. I don't think we've done this since Mania last year, the three of us.
I think so, yeah.
Yes, we LaBar and I, I'm talking to you as if you're not here. We did the SummerSlam prediction show, I recall, and Josh and I have done some other ones in between that, but we didn't get to do anything for Survivor Series, and yeah, I think WrestleMania was the last one we did. So, normally I do try to keep LaBar on the four major PLE contract here on the Juice Box, but life gets in the way. But be that as it may, fellas, it's the Royal Rumble. Josh and I talked about it in the retrospective, LaBar, but this is, WrestleMania is what it is, and SummerSlam is, it's going to get two nights eventually, and some are even saying Royal Rumble could get two nights eventually. But to me, Royal Rumble, if not number 1A, could be the most exciting of the PLEs on the WWE calendar. What are your thoughts just as we come into this event that's been around since 1988?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely always it's got an element of excitement and surprise to it because of the the nature and format of what the Royal Rumble match is. I mean, yeah, WrestleMania obviously has the grandest spectacle to it. We all know that's that those matches matter the most. But yeah, I think right behind that, absolutely, you can look at Rumble and now more than ever with I think we'd agree that the depth of the Raw, SmackDown, and then the NXT rosters, which we know they'll implement NXT if they want to win the Rumble matches, that's stronger than it's ever been. And then you have, by proof of the recent relationship announced with TNA, and just even letting some other talents work, Noah and Bloodsport, obviously WWE is showing that they're willing to work with more organizations, and so that really then opens up for the element of a surprise of even if it's just a one-off of who's in a 30-man match or a 30-woman match too.
Right. And Josh, I'll throw it to you next as well. Like LaBar said, the depth is so crazy, not just in WWE, but the companies that they're allowing to flourish and come into, and TNA is probably going to have a few talents potentially involved in this Royal Rumble as well. Just speaking on the depth of both men and women, now that we are almost, 7 or 8 years into the Women's Rumble, I would wager both men and women's Rumbles this year in particular might be the most stacked they've ever been to this point. Do you agree with that? And do you see this, can it get any bigger? And I don't mean a 40-man Rumble. We're not doing 2011 again, but just the level of talent across the board. Is it the best it's ever been to your, opinion?
I think for the men, absolutely. The women's takes a little bit of a backseat this year. A few years ago, I think with the women's Royal Rumble in 2022 and 2023, there was a lot of more options. I think this year there's maybe 2 or 3 that you think are going to win, but the men's is probably the most stacked that I've seen in many years. There's so many key players in key storylines that are involved in this match, and you think, all of the situation with the bloodline, it goes back to who all has been involved in the bloodline that has gotten a rub, whether it's a Sammy or Jay or Drew or Seth or Roman or Punk. I mean, there's 7 or 8 individuals in the men's Royal Rumble this year that I think could potentially win. We'll talk obviously about the winners later. The women's match to me this year is not the most stacked because you have a champion in Rhea Ripley who has been a winner of this. You have a champion in Tiffany Stratton who has elevated herself into a prime spot and likely a prime championship match at WrestleMania. So the options, in my opinion, for the women are a little more limited than the men's, but that doesn't mean that there's a lot of great talent in the women's Royal Rumble. I think the women's Royal Rumble is a little bit more predictable in terms of narrowing it down to 2 or 3, but the men's has multiple former world champions, multiple former main event WrestleMania key players, or players that have never main evented WrestleMania but should have. So it should be very interesting to see how they really build out these two matches in terms of who's the first 2 or 3 entered, who are the last 2 or 3 entered, and you can really decide from there who will become the Royal Rumble winners for the men's and the women.
Yeah, Josh, I agree with you with the women's that like it's a much narrower field of who's realistically going to win, but that match might be more inviting and more unexpected in terms of going back to the who do we see show up in the 30, like that might be where WWE's relation, that could be really interesting considering the depth of how good the NXT women's roster is right now, considering the depth of what TNA has over there, and then and then who knows what other potential talent, possibly female talent, could return or what have you. I think the surprise element is greater on the women's Rumble.
Yeah,
and especially with the legends that they also filter in, who knows, how many different spots. And we'll touch on it, but there's only been 15 men announced and 10 women announced for the Rumble as of this recording. So who knows if SmackDown will add a little bit more to that. But I think it's right in the sweet spot of, put enough talent in the realm. The match sells itself, but you leave room for more surprises or different avenues they could take certain characters and where they place them in 1 to 30. I don't even think anybody's actually drawn a number yet for any of these Rumbles to my knowledge, so that always is a nice little surprise. Although I do enjoy, they could do it on the actual PLE, of course, but I do enjoy when they would have someone go backstage, they draw a number, and either they're pissed about it or they try to sell it off, or all the different ways that they've come into, wow, I got number 1, or I got 27. I'm going to kind of hold on to that. So I don't know. I'm really looking forward to seeing, again, with 15 people announced for the men. That's a lot. And again, we'll talk a little bit more about that
and it's a stacked 15 too.
Yeah,
it is a crazy 15. So I'm looking forward to us discussing it. And before we get all the way down there, I want to make sure you guys are at least aware to, I'm going to ask you guys your, final 4 for both. So if you can, maybe get that jotted down as we continue talking about the whole show. And then by the time we get to those Rumbles, we can discuss it. But before we dive into the Royal Rumble, and I mentioned this on the Royal Rumble retrospective with Josh this past week, but a very exciting new venture is kind of hopping in here with the Juice Box, throwing their straw into the Juice Box, if you will, and that is Pool Party Gaming, a sports pool platform, free to play, free to win. It is a platform where there's 25 different questions, and it's not just generic, who's going to be number 1 in the Rumble, or there's a lot of different multiple choice, interesting, unique, over, under, a wide variety of questions in regards to the Royal Rumble this Saturday. And, it's free to play, and we still don't know exactly where the prizes land for this. But they are partnering up here with the Juice Box. They've done college football, pro football. They've done a few watch parties. Josh, I know you have a little bit more details as well before I pass it over to you. It's really exciting that we get to do this because Wrestle Rumble for a long time, and shout out to Matt of Wrestle Rumble, really captivated a lot of wrestling fans by having an actual way to gamble, win, have even more fun with pro wrestling events. And unfortunately, he sunset the Wrestle Rumble brand as of the beginning of 2025. But, one door closes, another opportunity opens. And, we kind of talked about this about a week or 2 ago, and it's kind of come to fruition all of a sudden. And we're going to, have it through the Juice Box. I'm going to promote it out through Twitter. So check my Twitter, check Josh's Twitter, at Josh Isenberg 4, at Juicy Steen, at Pool Party Gaming as well. The links will be there, the availability to log on, make your picks, and potentially win some cool prizes. Like I said, free to play, free to win. Josh, thank you for getting me involved with this kind of venture. I know you were an integral part. You don't work for this company, but you're help facilitating as part of the Juice Box family. So any other words you want to kind of throw out in regards to Pool Party Gaming and the Royal Rumble Pick'em?
Yeah, no, the Royal Rumble Pick'em's gonna be fantastic. They're first dipping into the pool of professional wrestling, and being a part of, and again, not being affiliated with them, but the guys that I've known for a handful of years have done such a great job. A bunch of IT, very smart guys who really dipped their toes into it about a year and a half ago with college football, with the NFL, and then partnering with a bunch of bars and restaurants in the Pittsburgh area, but free to play across the country, across the world, really giving an opportunity for wrestling fans, that untapped market where I think anybody likes to gamble these days, unless you're, somewhere in the Bible Belt in South Carolina where it might be illegal to do so, but still an opportunity for you to get involved on the fun pool party gaming, not just with pro wrestling. So if you're interested in any other sporting ventures, as I think most people are, you cross-function yourself with loving football, loving wrestling, a lot of avenues to get involved in. And like you said, free to play, free to win, always different prizes, always different, monetary prizes, gifts from WWE and whatever, sporting event you get. So very exciting to really getting them involved in the world that we've all, fallen in love with 20, 25 years ago, and that is professional wrestling. LaBar maybe like 45 years ago, but we all know that, we all know when we start.
I was around when it was WWWF. That's a lie, folks. I really wasn't.
But yeah, LaBar, I know you partnered with Wrestle Rumble. We did it with Chair Shot for so long, and of all events, as I just mentioned earlier, the Royal Rumble is probably the most exciting and most fun to have a little, not a side bet, but just something else like a bingo card or your pool, a pool where people choose and pick a certain entrant for the Rumble. It's always been that type of event. So, I mean, you would agree that it's probably the most exciting of the PLEs to do something like this.
Oh, for sure. I mean, obviously, like when Wrestle Rumble sunsetted just recently, they were doing, polls on a lot of the big PLEs. But I mean, at the start where he just did it once a year, it was off of Royal Rumble, hence the name, because it was so fun. And he really was ahead of it. It was ahead of its time because all of the different ways, like obviously, like the first roadblock when you try to pitch to somebody about any kind of a gambling thing and a gambling pool on pro wrestling is well, everything's fixed, so why am I gonna? And so Wrestle Rumble was really good about having questions and elements that like you wouldn't like how many times is there a table spot, or how many times does the finisher get hit, like things that like you would have to be involved in the matchmaking, which obviously nobody who's betting on it is. So it was clever. It was done well in terms of having to get down to the minute of how long a particular match might run. So I mean, really, it's all kind of stuff that eventually the DraftKings and the big dogs took. I mean, it's unfortunate that they didn't. It's unfortunate Wrestle Rumble didn't have more like legal protection of themselves, with his concept. But yeah, no, it was a lot of fun. I mean, it's like, I mean, I can remember sitting in Josh's basement like with him and some other friends back when we were in college, and it was just like you play the game of everybody tries to make a guess of who's coming in at what entry and who's going to win, and just putting a few bucks into it. It's the easiest and most natural thing to start gambling on if you're going to gamble on anything in WWE.
Absolutely, and that's the best part about pool party gaming. Whenever I was approached about this, I was like, free to play and free to win. Like normally you'd throw some money at this, and I know I've got a few friends that have put quite a bit of money down towards Wrestle Rumble in the past, and always never showed up in that top 50. So I know that their money was easily lost. But here there's no risk. There's tiebreakers because somehow, some way, someone's going to have the exact maybe same choices that you landed on in this crazy world of pro wrestling. But it's a unique venture. I'm looking forward to seeing how this partnership pans out. Royal Rumble, if this goes well, I'm sure they're going to want to get out for Elimination Chamber, and I would wager they're going to do WrestleMania as well. So keep your eyes glued to my page at Juicy Steen, of course, on Twitter, at Pool Party Gaming, of course, as well. Josh's Twitter at Josh Isenberg 4, where you can find out how to get into this and sign up and potentially win some cool prizes, and all while watching the Royal Rumble this very weekend. So looking forward to that. Appreciate Josh for helping me get involved with that. And let's actually throw our straws into the Royal Rumble itself. Now, I referenced the 2011 Royal Rumble earlier, and this is the same type of show. There's only 4 matches on this show, which is very interesting. We've discussed it in the past how the current Triple H PLE formula is that 5 to 6 match structure, unless it's WrestleMania or SummerSlam, especially now SummerSlam getting that second day, of course. It kind of throws things off, but 4 matches, and 2 of them are going to be over an hour. They sell the whole show. Do you prefer this type of, close knit show, even though we do have a 2 out of 3 falls match, a ladder match, huge stakes. So these matches will likely go longer than your normal match. But LaBar, do you think 4 matches for a Royal Rumble card is apt, or are you already on board for having a 2-night Rumble, potentially in Saudi Arabia?
No, I like to keep Rumble one night, and I love this kind of format. I love it when even on the other PLEs when they, when they're keeping it to like 5 matches and trying to keep it tight. One, because just by the nature of how these things are streamed, you have to build in basically a 5-minute break in between each match or segment anyways. So if you're gonna have 5 matches, you got to factor in for 4 or 5 breaks, and so so that's right there. That's an additional 20 to 25 minutes of you're either seeing ads or you're seeing backstage stuff or vignettes or what have you. So I'm a big thing about of the less is more, of leave them wanting more, especially when you have such depth that by not throwing everything on PLEs, you probably have left yourself some good meat, some good matches that you can build and advertise as main events for Raw and SmackDown. So yeah, I'm all for this. Rumble, I know some might say, oh, go 2 nights like the other PLEs are going, the other big ones, and have the men's one night and the women's the other. I don't think that's the way to go yet, because I'm just being honest. While the women's talent is phenomenal, the ratio, I don't know what it is, if it's 3-1, the ratio is still in the men's favor in terms of how many men's stories are going on week to week on Raw, SmackDown, and even NXT. That until they have, I don't know if until it's just, I don't think it's enough for a women's Rumble to sell the entire night. Or it would be a case of, if the women's Rumble is on its own night, you would also have to anchor it with like a really big singles world title match, whether it's a women's world title or men's world title. But I still don't know if a women's Rumble every year will be enough to be the thing to sell one night. So for now, I'm fine with keeping it as all together.
I think the same thing, Justin. I think, one night is perfectly fine. You even look at last year with 4 matches, and the other 2 matches were basically, the U.S. Championship match and then Roman in a fatal 4-way. If they want to do 2 nights, you're right. It has to be a big singles match with a Roman or somebody else like that caliber to sell it. But I would prefer it being one night, being 3.5 hours, which for the Royal Rumble, it's a perfect spot for them to really give the Rumble match, an hour's time. You factor in the video packages, you're looking at an hour and 15, hour and 20 minutes with both Royal Rumble matches. Then, like you said, the built-in 4 or 5-minute breaks between matches or a few backstage segments to break things up. And also, not every title always needs to be defended on a PLE. I know they introduced 2 women's mid-card championships, but unless they do a lot of development in terms of building those storylines week to week, I'd prefer to see them main event a SmackDown or main event a Raw on Netflix. So this is perfect. One night for the Royal Rumble. Let's keep it at this. And obviously with 4 matches this year, it should be another wonderful, wonderful event, as the Royal Rumble seemingly always delivers.
And I love the earlier start time too.
You can absolutely split those up. But the Royal Rumble match itself, men or women, sells itself. You never need to promote it any bigger than that. And I think it's perfect now that they do have the women's Royal Rumble, is that no matter what, whether the women start or end, you can begin and end. You can bookend the night with a Royal Rumble match. So you start and end the night with the most exciting match of the year. And I think if you split that up, you're really at risk at diluting, one of the 2 nights. And I don't know. It would suck to have, even if it is the men's, whichever Rumble might not have as much star power any certain year. If that was the match to close out a night, and it's just like, was it really worth it? And I'd hate for that to happen to a match that has such a great history and lineage.
Yep.
Yeah, I agree.
So let's get into it. Let's start with the non-Royal Rumble matches, as it were. 2 out of 3 falls for the WWE Tag Team Championship. I can't even believe I'm saying that this match is happening on a WWE card, but in 2025, anything can happen in the World Wrestling Federation. DIY, Johnny Gargano, Tommaso Ciampa defend their tag titles against the Motor City Machine Guns, Sabin, Shelley. This is going to be a wild, fun, wrestlers wrestling match, and the fact that it's 2 out of 3 falls, I believe, is just going to make this even more exciting. The tag team division across both Raw and SmackDown have tried to gain some steam as they've split the titles officially a while back, and with the Motor City Machine Guns entering in to WWE. It's just a wild thing that it's even happening. But they've already won and lost the titles. But now they get this rematch with DIY. LaBar, I'll send it to you. First, how crazy is it still? You're a veteran watcher of pro wrestling. So is you, Josh. But LaBar, just as a guy who's watched for so long, can you even fathom that the Motor City Machine Guns are in this spot in 2025 after being everywhere else for so long?
I mean, it's definitely it's not as surprising as it would have been if you would have said it maybe 5 or 10 years ago. But yeah, I mean, it's
Right.
It's a long time coming. Obviously, they're kind of in the same mindset to me, kind of like AJ Styles, like where once upon a time I thought, AJ Styles, he's been everywhere else. And it's like, is WWE going to be the one place he never gets to? And then obviously he does, and he's had a great career in WWE. So once that happens, it opens up, possibilities. But yeah, it certainly still is surprising that these guys are obviously they're in their 40s by now, but it's great. It's never too late, right? And they look great, they still move great, so it's not like the age is a factor. And so yeah, it's exciting for them. There's a guys of I came across when I worked with the Indies in the Ohio area. It was a lot of Ohio and Michigan crossover, and ran across these guys several times. They always were very well liked. Obviously, they were always getting some of the best pops of the night on whatever cards they were on. So it's cool to see them on the stage. It's cool to say that they're in a tag team title match at a Royal Rumble. So yeah, it's good to see them getting not just getting paid, but getting the stage.
Absolutely. And just in regards to the match, guys that you said are from the Midwest, do you see Machine Guns reclaiming these championships, or do you just, is DIY, is it too early to already take them off of those guys after, regaining them recently?
Yeah. Had the Machine Guns not already had albeit brief, but already had a title run, I would have said, yeah, they win it here. But because they already had a brief one, I think they're I like both Gargano and Ciampa. This has been one of those projects where like Triple H and Creative are just they're trying to make it work. It's like we try him as faces, okay, let's try him as heels, let's try him fighting each other as singles. So I think they're going to retain the titles here. I think they're going to make a real attempt, they being the company, to try to get this version of DIY, this heel version, even if they did at first envision them as being like the baby faces, they're going to try this and try to get this to work. And so you need to have them retain, have some heat. I'll be really interested if they do hold the titles all the way to Mania, and obviously Mania is later than ever this year. It's in late April. I'll be really curious to see what WWE Creative lines up for them, assuming they have a match at one of the nights of Mania, because I kind of feel like this, consciously or subconsciously to fans and maybe even to the office, this kind of feels like all right, let's try this DIY thing one more time before we call it time of death.
Justin, you're absolutely right, and nothing against the Motor City Machine Guns, because I was a fan of them, many years ago. Still am. They haven't completely clicked. I think for many reasons. One of them being that people know who they are, but they are definitely more of a hardcore know who they are type of team. They don't really have a lot of backstory that the casual WWE fan can sink their teeth into. I think DIY picks up the victory here. I think they do it in a dirty way to really establish themselves even more as heels. The best part about DIY is they were so good in NXT, but they got rushed up to the main card for a while, then pushed back down, and the pandemic kind of hurt their feud a bit. It's kind of back and forth with DIY, right? Like they were given championships, then they didn't have them. They were kind of floating in obscurity for a little bit. Then they come back, they win the tag team titles. There hasn't been solid ground for them on the main roster since they've been established on the main roster. Not talking about the very few times that they came up, a handful of years ago. But I think DIY picks up the victory here. The Machine Guns, they do great things. I think 2 out of 3 falls match could hopefully open more eyes to the casual fan on these guys are just fantastic workers and they want to get behind them. It's hard to think, 2 out of 3 falls with, FTR, the Revival, and Gargano and Ciampa were just that opened the eyes to so many people, but was also on a smaller scale. That was NXT back in the day. But I think at this point, DIY picks up the win, continues to be tag team champions. I want them to hold the title to WrestleMania because I don't know if there is one tag team in my mind right now, especially on SmackDown, that are going to get a bigger rub and make a big deal about them being champions than WWE wanting to make this project work more.
Yeah, nothing might have been more telling with DIY to the office that the biggest pop they're getting as babyfaces is we have them go out and cosplay DX.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I tend to agree with both of you guys. I would like to see the Machine Guns, get this big moment at, they're not in Michigan, of course, for this show, but they're pretty damn close. But I do tend to agree that this might be one of the last tries for DIY differentiating and trying to be the heel team now. And if you do hold the titles on them all the way until Mania, even though, Josh, I agree, some teams may not be available as over or willing or worth it to get to that shot now. If you have DIY hold the titles until then, you either can build more teams in that time frame, or you build enough teams on the same level in that time frame and you have a triple threat, fatal four-way, gauntlet style, something like that, to kind of highlight more teams at WrestleMania to really get a lot of teams over at once that may have not gotten that spotlight, especially now with the 2-night event at WrestleMania. So I'm going to make it a clean sweep and say DIY get the victory. However, I will say this will probably be a wonderful match through and through. I do see some sort of a cheeky way that DIY gets one of these falls, and I don't know. I think it's just a guarantee you're going to have a great match, and I'm really glad that they get a moment on this card. I mean, it's 2 Rumble matches, a huge ladder match with a lot of nostalgia, and then these 4 guys. So I mean, it's the company behind them really believes in them as a whole, I would say.
Yeah.
So speaking of nostalgia, let's talk Turkey. Let's talk ladder match. Let's talk Winged Eagle Championship, whether it's the replica or not. That remains to be seen. Maybe they'll have a true Reggie Parks Winged Eagle by the time we get to Indianapolis. But Cody Rhodes defends the undisputed WWE Championship against Kevin Owens in a ladder match, and the Winged Eagle title will also be suspended above the ring. I love the fact that, Kevin Owens is doing his own Ric Flair Real World Champion thing, but with the Winged Eagle title, it's a little bit of a, more updated version of that old storyline from like 91, 92 with Ric Flair. And it's great. Kevin Owens is delusional. He's wearing Sami Zayn shirts, even though Sami's like on another show hurting other people and they're not even friends. He's just trolling everybody at this point. He has a great couple Cody shirts in the last couple of weeks that are now available on WWEshop.com. But this match to me screams show stealing. It screams a lot of crazy high spot potential. However, I don't see Kevin Owens walking out as both champion. Mr. Berg, I will throw it to you first. Do you enjoy this nostalgia trip that we've seen with Kevin Owens, especially considering all of us grew up with the Winged Eagle being the title up until 1998? So do you see Kevin Owens making a huge moment as he normally does, as I claimed, Mr. Royal Rumble here in this ladder match with Cody?
Yeah, I think this match is going to be just fantastic. The nostalgia part I have really enjoyed because he is definitely an old school 80s, 90s looking wrestler, aside from the big muscle heads that, we became accustomed to, maybe in 93 to 97 with a few littler guys sprinkled in. But he is a guy that is connecting with the crowd, even though he's getting booed, because people can relate to Kevin Owens because he doesn't look like a guy that is at the gym every single day or hitting the tanning bed every single day. He is a normal fighter that looks like you can go have a beer with, and if you see him at the bar, you still don't want to fight him because he will kick your ass. So I love the fact that he is that, rustic looking guy that you can kind of relate to in every day. He's an everyman. He's more of an everyman, similar to Dusty than Cody is. Cody's the pretty boy. So I like the nostalgia part here. My heart says if any time is the right time to pull the trigger and giving Kevin Owens the championship, it's here, but it's not going to happen. I can't see Kevin Owens being the undisputed champion heading into WrestleMania, even though he's done some of the best work of his career. Even going back, to WrestleMania 38, basically selling the match with Stone Cold Steve Austin. You didn't see Stone Cold until that night of WrestleMania 38. Kevin has done everything he can to be established as himself as one of the top guys in WWE, no matter what you give him. And we've seen him in championship matches at the Royal Rumble, and he does not win those championship matches at the Royal Rumble, whether it's against Roman Reigns, whether it's against Logan Paul, whatever the case may be. But they always know that they can go back to Kevin Owens anytime, any place. But I think right here, the bigger picture is the money. The logical sense is for Cody to retain, and then having Cody just sit and wait and find out who is going to challenge him for the championship at WrestleMania. So my nod goes to Cody. Would it shock me if Kevin won? Not shock, but I'd be very surprised if he did.
And LaBar, before I pass it to you, I want to kind of set this up. So I said Kevin Owens was Mr. Royal Rumble. He's had 3 crazy matches with Roman Reigns, no DQ, last man standing, and then a regular match for the title, and a last man standing match with Dean Ambrose back in 2016 at the Royal Rumble. So this is another crazy spot match for KO to be in. And as much as I'd love to see him with the championship and maybe, have that Sami Zayn, Kevin Owens world title match down the line, I think Cody will likely come out of this the winner. But that's not what I'm going to ask you, LaBar. I'm going to ask you this. The other night, Saturday night's main event, they set this up where Shawn Michaels, San Antonio's own, does the contract signing as moderator. And I had stated as a prediction, and it almost happened, but we got the reverse, that the last time Shawn Michaels was in a ring where the Winged Eagle was in the same ring as him, he got stunned by Steve Austin and lost the title at WrestleMania 14. We did not get a stunner, however. He hit Sweet Chin Music. Could we see Shawn Michaels playing a factor in this and playing off what Josh said with Steve Austin coming back for a KO match? Do you think there's any chance Shawn Michaels comes out of retirement a second time to erase the bald Shawn Michaels match from Saudi Arabia and go against KO at WrestleMania?
Well, it's funny you asked that. I mean, I tweeted something similar just on the nice historical, nod that it would be when they announced that Shawn was going to be the moderator for this. I didn't predict the stunner, but I said something similar as, it's fitting because he was the last person to win and lose that Winged Eagle title. Once you saw Austin come back, and obviously it was a very good kind of street fight, kind of brawl match that he and KO did. Nothing is impossible at this point, and obviously Shawn is, that's Steve coming in and out as he does as a legend. Shawn's there, he's now part of the quote unquote office. He's there every day, so it's not impossible, and certainly, because I also agree. I mean, and Josh laid out a lot of great points. I agree. It's hard for me to imagine Kevin winning this. So then you start to go, okay, well, what does he do for Mania? You certainly want to have him involved. And boy, oh boy, wouldn't that grab my attention if Mr. Royal Rumble, as you just dubbed him, is having a match against Mr. WrestleMania. That would certainly be an attraction. I mean, obviously Shawn does not quite look like the Heartbreak Kid like he used to with the hair and everything, but he certainly still looks like he's in good shape. And yeah, we all kind of gave him a pass. We still kind of acknowledge that his last match is that one against The Undertaker at Mania. We kind of just ignored that Saudi Arabia happened because we all just don't want to, that everything that could go wrong went wrong. I like the creative. I don't think I would see Shawn necessarily get involved in this match, but like if Kevin were to lose and then the next thing we see of Kevin, and maybe he even disappears for a week or two and we just let it kind of fester, but if the next thing we saw was Kevin running roughshod, destroying things in NXT, destroying the backstage, that, and then that, again, whether that produces him versus Shawn or whether that produces him versus and Shawn, lines up an NXT talent. But I don't hate that creative. But yeah, I mean, I can't see Kevin winning this. I'm impressed that this feud has been going on, since October, I guess, and we've had matches already between these two, but yet they've managed to keep the juice in this. Like, I'm interested, no pun intended there.
Hey.
So I'm interested in the match, but I have a hard time. The only reason I have a hard time seeing Kevin win this, he's done great work, but the biggest thing is this show, of course, kicks off the traditional road to Mania, and Cody as champion going into Mania for the first time. Obviously, he's chased the last couple of years, so this would be the first time him going into Mania as champion. And we'll talk about it here in a few minutes. When you look at the people in the Rumble and the scenarios, there's just too much money on the table available of matches and scenarios for Cody as champion, for Elimination Chamber, for if they do another Saturday night's main event on the road to Mania, and then for Mania. Like, there's just too much that you can't leave on the table right now.
I tend to agree, and the only caveat for maybe KO winning would be that, a ladder match loss does not really hurt Cody in the long run in regards to his status. But to get your point, he's been chasing. He came back at WrestleMania, then he chased and lost to Roman, then he chased and won finally. You're right. This would be the next, the fourth year for WrestleMania and Cody. Now he's going to defend, and it's another avenue. It's a whole different way of looking at how Cody's going to play up this WrestleMania, where he has to sit and wait, and he doesn't get to point at Roman in the box and then it not be not happen, and then it happened, and then it not happen. He's going to be in the box, and someone's going to have to point to him. So I think it's unanimous. All three of us are going to take Cody to win this.
Yeah, I think so. And last thing I want to say is, there's going to be the inevitable return of Randy Orton, and this wouldn't be a bad time if Cody pulls out that pile driver to take out Kevin Owens, where you can write Kevin Owens off of television for a few weeks, and then maybe middle of February, end of February, he comes back and tries to get his comeuppance, and maybe Randy returns then. I think that long story is the most logical story for both of those guys to have their match at WrestleMania. I think you could factor in other people, but don't count out, Kevin, like you said, Justin, being, losing this match, maybe being away for a few weeks and then coming back and try and just, run through the roster until inevitably Randy Orton comes back. And again, not to spoil what our predictions are going to be later, I don't know if they need Randy Orton in the Rumble match this year based on who they have and based on, some other, surprises that are going to be trickled in here.
Well, and with Cody, real quick, with Cody, like, as I'm saying, money on the table, like right now, or at least from my perspective, I don't know about you guys, where Cody's at, like the biggest matches that you still have right now that you could do is obviously a Cody versus Punk, which was kind of teased, which I'm sure we'll talk about in a moment. There's that. Randy, absolutely. Randy, Cody, even he drops it in he doesn't spend a lot of time. He always drops it in subtly about how Randy, is a mentor, and of course we know the history that's there, and of course we know how great of a heel Randy can play. So like I think we all know, smarter fans at least know, like, hey, that's one that's there, and if that's one that Cody probably wants to do before he or Randy ever retire, that's there. And of course, and Cody doesn't have to be champion for this, but you eventually have to pay off Cody and Rock, I think. I know The Rock's a real mystery based upon how he acted and how he's presented when they rolled out into Netflix. But, I refuse to believe, even though we know they called an audible last year on the Road to Mania, they still eventually everybody got on the same page. And then after that Mania, they made a point to do a big segment with The Rock. He hands something to Cody. Like, I refuse to believe that Triple H and Cody and Rock and Brian Gewirtz that they all did it and didn't, and then everybody just went on a conference call at some point and said, "Oh, just screw it, we'll just forget about it." Like, no.
Yeah.
So at some point that's got to be paid off, and it will be.
Definitely.
That would be funny if they were just like, you know what, this is not working. I don't think we should continue.
I shouldn't leave out. We know Paul Heyman, of course, probably had a hand in that too. Like, so. That is too many powerful creative people for them all just to go, screw it.
And before we dive into the Royal Rumble matches, I did want to ask you guys quickly. It was recently announced as before this recording, the headliner for the 2025 Hall of Fame will be none other than Triple H, unbeknownst to him, apparently. And it's caused quite the discourse from some fans thinking, wow, Triple H putting himself in the Hall of Fame again as the guy who's running the company. Yet I look at it as, when did you want him to go in as a singles guy? I mean, if they didn't have a true headliner this year, whether that be Batista or whatever, what better time to do it, even though, he might not have wanted to put himself in right now, but they chose him. I mean, was he going to decline that? I just don't get that part of it where, of course he didn't choose to put himself in. The board and higher ups said Triple H is time to go in. LaBar, do you think that it's fair? Like, when would he have gone in had it not been maybe like this year per se? Like, would he have just declined? Like, you know what? I don't think I'm deserving of this right now. Let someone else do it. Like, clearly they had an idea. He's enough of a headliner. Maybe Batista's off doing a movie. Can't do it this year.
Yeah. Well, so first off, I can't prove this, but I had heard it from pretty reliable people years ago that this is prior to the cardiac scare that he had, which obviously then led to him, truly saying, all right, I'm done wrestling now. I'm not going to wrestle anymore. I had heard that prior to that, that it had been pitched on some years from Vince of having Triple H go in as a singles, and Triple H was kind of against it because at that point he was still wrestling, if nothing else, at least Mania each year, right? And so he kind of passed on and said, no, there's other legends that we can be putting in, and I'm still wrestling. So again, I can't prove that, but I heard that from some reliable people. So that being said, now that he's truly done and truly is retired, and I believe he will stay retired, it's not a case of where we've seen wrestlers come out of retirement many times. I truly believe for his health, and it's one thing for his health, but also like he has way more at stake now. Not aside from his health, which obviously is trumps everything, but now he has at stake that he's the guy that runs the whole damn show. So it's like he can't risk being out there and like ended up in a hospital for weeks on end or months on end. And like he's got a lot of people's lives depend on him. So I truly believe he's retired. So okay, so now it's appropriate for him to be in the running, to always be consideration to be put in the Hall of Fame because he's retired, and of course his in-ring career is absolutely 110% worthy and valid. And I just say this, yes, it's a little awkward, like when you're the guy in charge and you're the guy that everybody knows gets to make the final creative decisions. It's a little awkward that like you're going in under that banner. But based upon what I said earlier, I can buy into the story of people around him kind of convinced him, and kind of like I don't know if it was as surprised as the story sounds and reads, but I do believe the layer of like maybe it was pitched by important people around him. He turns it down a few times, and they kind of kept pushing at him. And I'll just say this to anybody who's like, oh look, here's this guy, he married the boss's daughter, and now he's booking himself in the Hall of Fame. He absolutely has to go in. And if you're going to say, oh, we should wait until he's not running creative until we put him in, we're going to be waiting a long damn time, like maybe 20 years. And by that point, he took better care of himself than most of his colleagues. So by that point, if you wait 20 years to put him in when he's 75 and Taker's 80 and Austin's 80, all of his great in-ring rivals, if they're still around, might not be able to physically make it to a Hall of Fame to celebrate and or induct him. So do it now, for Christ's sakes.
I agree. Josh, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I agree completely, and I'll keep it very short and sweet. But it's not like he's saying happy 200th anniversary Tony Khan in AEW, and Khan put that up whenever Dynamite had their 200th episode, where it's just like, okay, that's kind of cringeworthy. He's done everything in this company. He's done everything with his professional wrestling career. Yeah, I didn't think twice about it. I was like, well, that's great. We knew it was coming, and it was the timestamp of we know now that he's never going to compete in a ring again. He doesn't need to, and like Justin said, a lot more people, a lot more responsibility are on his shoulders right now. So happy to see it.
And it's actually crazy. I was scrolling Twitter just a moment ago, and they actually have now thrown out the video from it happening, where Undertaker, Shawn Michaels come out. Triple H does kind of look a little stunned, and I don't have any audio playing, but they're kind of saying we're putting you in, so you guys should absolutely check that out whenever we're done here on the Juice Box. But very interesting to say the least. And I agree with both of you. Like, when was he going to go in? What better time, to go in? If not now, when? And again, if Batista's been a guy that they've lined up for a while, maybe he's going to be a headliner, like he should be. But if he's off doing stuff, he can't do it. You need to have a headliner regardless. And we've seen through the years how lackluster, unfortunately, some of these, Hall of Fame classes have been. So you got to load it up at the top sometimes.
Who's the other biggest names? Like The Rock's not in, right? They still haven't done that one, right?
Yeah, so you got that banked. You have that ready to go. Vince.
Oh, Vince is never going in. Let me ask you guys both. So both of you right now, since this news is kind of fresh to all of us, who do you think inducts Triple H? Is it Shawn?
It should be Shawn. If Flair was 5 years, 10 years younger, maybe Flair. But
no, you don't give a live mic to Flair anymore.
That's exactly. So I think Shawn's probably your safe bet. But I think it'll be cool. It'll be nice to see him get that moment. And then look, the best part about this for anybody that's detracting it, once it's over, okay, then there's never a question of it anymore. He's in, it's done. He can focus on doing what he needs to do. And it was a good moment. Like we all have said, it had to happen at some point. So
kind of weird. It is kind of weird, though.
Congratulations to Jean-Paul Levesque, WCW Starrcade 1994 performer.
Classic WCW little dig in there.
It is kind of wild that you look back and you're going to say, Triple H is in the Hall of Fame first as with DX before he was for his
Right.
accomplishments.
Yeah.
Because and DX was, I mean, it had 3 incarnations at least, but they were so popular and they had to strike when the iron was hot. And Michaels had already had his moment, so why not? I mean, the 4 Horsemen, a bunch of people are multi-time Hall of Famers at this point, so who the hell cares? But
Triple H could get it a third time if they put Evolution in.
Which they will.
Oh, you know what? Oh, wow. And then Flair would be time.
They won't put Evolution in until Batista and Orton go in as singles, but like I could see like in 10 years from now Evolution going in.
Yeah.
And then Flair would be a 3-timer with the Horseman himself, and then that'd be
if he gets the invite, I don't know.
Well, speaking of invites and entrants and who's allowed in and who's coming out and who's not, let's talk Royal Rumble, guys. Let's do the women's Royal Rumble match first. I'm so glad that they've had this women's Royal Rumble for a few years now, where it might not be as stacked as the men every year, but I think it's still pretty top heavy in regards to talent across the board, and even just those who are announced is pretty strong, let alone who we might think could hop in. So I'm going to read off real quick the 10 women that have been announced as of today: Nia Jax, Bayley, Charlotte Flair, Naomi, Bianca Belair, Liv Morgan, Raquel Rodriguez, Lyra Valkyria, Ivy Nile, and Io Sky. Josh, I'm going to pass it over to you. At some point, give me your final 4 Royal Rumble women's competitors, a winner, and do you have any surprises that you think are up WWE's sleeve here for the women's Rumble?
Absolutely. So here we go. Final 4 for me is going to be Charlotte, Liv Morgan, Trish Stratus, and Becky Lynch. And I think the winner is going to be, I'm going out on a limb here because we don't even know if she's going to be there, but I think Becky Lynch is going to win. They put
you're going to say Trish Stratus. I'm like, what are we doing?
No. I think these 4, I think Liv Morgan deserves to be in the final 4. She's been in the final 2 or the final 4 a couple of times. Being eliminated by Rhea Ripley a couple of years ago, where she was just on the precipice of winning that. They have done so much to build her up over the past year as being a credible champion, a great champion. And then you also have her, in the final 4, potentially winning, teasing Rhea again, which I don't think they'll pull the trigger on. But I do think it could come down to Charlotte and Becky. I think Charlotte is probably the obvious choice because they're, hyping her return kind of similar to what they did to Cody, where they announced him return, a long injury from his torn pec. But if I'm WWE, you can have Charlotte work her way up to it again. I think if Charlotte wins, there might be a little discourse from the crowd because she is a polarizing figure. People will be excited to see her, but there's going to be some boos if she wins, excuse me. So if she loses, who do you have her lose to? The person that we haven't seen since May, which is Becky Lynch, who is universally loved. And when that music hits, they're going to want to see Becky Lynch win. And I think you can redo Becky and Rhea from WrestleMania last year because that was a great match. Becky really didn't lose her championship. I think she lost it to Liv Morgan, but she didn't really lose it, and she went away, and then Rhea came in. So there's a lot of moving pieces in those 3 individuals, and I think you can build that up to WrestleMania where Liv is trying to get her revenge on Becky, and Becky obviously fights through her and finally gets to Liv Morgan. The surprises, obviously I said Trish. I think, we see potentially a Jordynne Grace now that she's signed with WWE. I can see somebody like a Nikki Bella come back and maybe 1 or 2 legends. The fact that they've only announced 10 people gives me a feeling of what they did for the first ever women's Royal Rumble, where they had, a handful of NXT, a handful of, veterans coming back. And I wouldn't be surprised if NXT had a Roxanne, had a Lash Legend, individuals like that who are really taking over the spotlight in NXT involved in this Royal Rumble match.
LaBar, I will throw it to you next, but we've got a few, potential multi-time winners that are going to be in this. Bayley, Bianca, Charlotte, and if Becky Lynch does in fact come back at this show, she also could be she actually could be, any of those women that I mentioned could be the first 2-time women's Royal Rumble winner. So LaBar, who do you have winning? Who's in your final 4? Is it going to be more legend heavy, NXT heavy? Jordynne Grace, is she going to go farther than anybody ever thought? What are your thoughts on the Women's Royal Rumble?
Well, I definitely think we'll get a Jordan Grace. I definitely think we'll get a sprinkle of some NXT. I would not be surprised to see Julia and or Stephanie Vaquer. And by the way, she's become my new favorite, Stephanie Vaquer. I think we'll get a little sprinkle of that. So in terms of some surprises, as Josh mentioned, I could definitely see a Nikki Bella pop up. I could also see, he's been around back now for over a year, and it's constantly mumbled about. Even if it's only a one-off, I could see an AJ Lee. I know Punk's always asked about it, and it seems like she's still. So that wouldn't shock me. I mean, it looks like, especially like, look, when Punk's Rumble last year, he was fresh back. He'd only been back for 2 months. Everything was still very, very new. He's been back now for over a year. Everything we can tell, he's getting along with everybody. Everybody's doing business. Everything's working like it should. There's no drama. So I could see him saying to his wife, like, yeah, this is good. Like, I feel good. Like, you should feel good if you want to come, even if it's just a one-off. I don't have Becky in my Final Four or my plans, and the reason being is that we know Charlotte's going to come back. That like Josh said, it's being built similar to how they did with Cody. Like, so Charlotte, and I think there will be some other, like I said, Nikki Bella and AJ Lee, some NXT ladies, maybe a TNA, a current TNA knockout. Like, so I think Becky could get not lost in the shuffle. She's still Becky Lynch, but there's a lot of surprise factor, and I do believe that there was something to the report weeks ago that she was initially maybe going to be part of the first Raw on Netflix, and then that got bumped. And I don't think you bump her if you have a big plan for her to win a Rumble or be a focal point. Like, so I wouldn't be shocked if this Rumble comes and goes and we don't see any Becky Lynch, but she gets her own moment in the sun not too long after, whether that's on a Raw or SmackDown or whether that's Chamber or whatever. But I don't have Becky in my plans. My Final Four is this. For my Final Four, I have Charlotte, I have Liv, I have Bayley, I have Nikki Bella. I think it's all, a lot of times, with some of these Rumble matches, you throw a surprise in the Final Four. There's usually like one surprise person that like you didn't necessarily even know that was going to be in it, or you didn't think was going to last that long. So
did you pick Karrion Kross in the Final Four last year, if my mind serves me correctly?
I don't know. We have to pull up the tape.
I have the tape somewhere.
I'm going Charlotte, Liv, Bayley, Nikki. Obviously Bayley, like we said, she won before. Liv's got the best momentum of her career. And out of the Final Four, I expect Nikki to be the first one eliminated in the Final Four, but I do have Charlotte winning. I have Charlotte winning. Obviously Charlotte is no stranger to the women's world title and the women's main event picture at Mania. We've seen some really good. Her and Rhea had one of the best matches I've ever seen in my life at a WrestleMania, and so, but I can still see Charlotte winning. You don't go back down that. Even though Rhea's continued to evolve and get bigger, which is hard to imagine, but she's more popular than ever. You don't go down that well again, but I think there's some fresh situations, especially with Tiffany Stratton, that I can see Charlotte Flair winning. And there's and the women's division has grown and developed so much since we last saw her that there's some interesting creative there. So I'm going Charlotte to win. I just, for nothing else, I can't see all this pomp and circumstance of her coming back and her getting eliminated. Like, I love Bianca Belair, but I can see Bianca Belair easily not making it to the Final Four because a returning Jade Cargill's back and somehow they eliminate each other.
I was going to ask that. Do we think Jade is ready to come back, whether injury or whatever it may be, to come back? Do you think she comes back at this Royal Rumble? Because I have her as a surprise, but I'm not sure.
I mean, they keep playing up this whole, Naomi's stepped in her play. They keep playing up this whole who done it, and like everybody obviously we got teased Bianca and Jade last year in the Rumble with just their interaction, and I mean that's a money match, but I don't think anybody wants to see, or I don't say anybody doesn't want to see, but I don't think that match is as effective trying to do baby face versus baby face. You need one of them to be the heel, and you probably need the more experienced of the two, and that being Bianca, to be the heel. So,
and not necessarily a title involved either.
Exactly right. So I think setting up a Bianca versus Jade definitely deserves a spot for one of the two nights of Mania. But again, face versus face is not the place for this. That needs to be a heel versus face, and I think Bianca. I think it'll be better if you have Bianca as the heel leading the way and letting Jade be the fan favorite.
I tend to agree with that, and I think Jade could come back. I like the whodunit, and I'm here for Bianca Belair to turn heel. I mean, if Montez ain't gonna do it, come on,
Yeah.
someone in their family has to. I do see Jordan Grace making a long run. I'm always curious as to who's number one, who's number two, because those are the true first surprises, potential. I mean, of course, anybody could come out in any of the numbers, but the first two, you hear the music, and that's where it's really exciting. And we'll talk about that in a moment with the men. But I also wouldn't mind seeing, I had Molly Holly as one of the legends potentially. Like Victoria, maybe. She was at ringside a couple of weeks ago on Raw. So I really like the legend factor. And
Awesome Kong, and not as Karma, but as Awesome Kong.
Yes.
Since TNA intellectual property is able to be used, let her be Awesome Kong.
Well, if that's the case, would you like to see Abyss in the men's rumble?
I actually wouldn't hate that. I don't. My only thing about that is I don't know.
Abyss, though, come on.
I was gonna say that's my only thing. I don't know how. I mean, Abyss has been off TV for so long as Abyss. I don't know.
I don't know. I feel like guys aren't giving him as much credit. Like it's not going to be they're not in Orlando, so it's not going to be AJ Styles worthy. But I think he's a character that people do know, and it's I don't know.
I think the best thing we can hope for is now that if they have access to the TNA tape library, is you can maybe get a nice documentary or a nice little special on Abyss that's on Peacock or on Peacock or on the net on Netflix. You're not. I don't think they're going to use, given all they have to work with here, I don't think they're going to, I hate to say waste, but I'm going to say waste. Yeah. I don't think they're going to waste one of the 30-minute spots on Abyss.
Yeah. And I also think it's, more of a possibility. They were talking about on the Major Wrestling Figure podcast. I know I'm going to give my final four here in a moment, but if you do a whole set of just TNA guys based off of who you have signed, even though you're also working with TNA, so you could throw the logo on it, you could do an Abyss, you could do an AJ Styles from TNA, you could do a Robert Roode, and you have so many different guys and girls that you could have that licensing and really have some cool characters. But before we get
Abyss
to the
comes out and everybody's just, and like more than half the crowd's like, is this one of the Wyatt Six that I don't know
about? Oh, that's terrible, because I would pop so huge for that music if they had it too. It would be so. If it were in Orlando, they would pull the trigger, but maybe their relationship is not as huge as it can be with TNA. But my final four for the women are Liv Morgan, Bianca Belair, Charlotte Flair, and Becky Lynch, and I have Charlotte winning, probably going against Tiffany Stratton. I still want to see Rhea versus Bianca at WrestleMania. So who knows if Bianca potentially gets into the chamber and maybe Jade and her have a moment there and maybe their matches down the line. But I kind of agree with you, LaBar. If they're going to pull they're finally going to pull the trigger on this, but Bianca heel turn, if she was the one, in fact, that, hurt Jade in the first place, then maybe that is set aside for something else. But I do have Charlotte winning this thing. And Josh, you said, fans might be upset, but hey, she's the best for a reason. So.
Oh yeah, I won't be upset. And my dad, who's going to his first Royal Rumble, and LaBar knows this very well. My father is a huge Charlotte Flair fan, so I might have to, put him in a cage after that happens.
Hose him down.
Put him in the shark cage. Yeah.
If he sees Charlotte and Stephanie McMahon in person, imagine if Stephanie resurfaces to announce the Triple H is going in the Hall of Fame. Good Lord, your dad will be.
Find some EMTs to shock him back to life.
Yeah.
Well, let's go to the men's Royal Rumble, and there are 15 men that have been announced for this, and I'm going to run down those real quick. And look, any of these 15, I feel like maybe not any, but a good chunk of these 15 I feel like could be worthy of winning. We've got LA Knight, John Cena, CM Punk, Jey Uso, Roman Reigns, Seth freaking Rollins, Drew McIntyre, Rey Mysterio, Sami Zayn, Shinsuke Nakamura, Logan Paul, Penta, Chad Gable, Braun Breaker, and Carmelo Hayes. Some of these names like in a row. Again, I mentioned it with the machine guns on a smaller scale, but just like the back-to-back of Cena, Punk, Roman, Seth, Shinsuke, Penta, like from all over the place, the history of all these guys, they're all healthy, and they're all in this Rumble together. Josh, I'll pass it to you. Final Four and
Give it
who's
to
your
LaBar
winner?
first. Give it to LaBar.
Okay, all right. We'll switch it up. LaBar.
I need to think about this one because I got like 10 people that have been writing down over the past hour that could be in the Final Four. I need more time.
So Mr. Berg wants to pass it over to Mr. LaBar. So Justin, who are your Final Four for the men? Who's your winner, and what type of legends do we see? And if you've got any other cool predictions, like who could be first, who could be 30, stuff like that, let it be known now.
Yeah, this is gonna be like the '92 Rumble, where like more than 2/3 of it's like Hall of Fame.
Hell
guys, when it's all said and done. I'll kind of build here. I think when talking about like one or two, who enters one or two, and you know of course that lends itself to entrances and everything. I would put Penta at one or two because it's been brief, but there seems like there's good momentum with him. Obviously, he's got a very cool entrance with the Pirate. We've only seen 2 entrances, but they've evolved it and they've advanced it from week 1 to week 2 for the better.
In 1 week.
And also he's got one of those entrances that's like you can't see him come through the curtain. He's already out there on the stage with the house lights down, so that would be a little weirder to do if he's coming in with if there's a 10-second countdown and everybody's eyes is on the entranceway. If he's already standing out there, even if it's dimly lit, you know what I mean? So like I think just to give the full effect of his entrance, I'd put him at 1 or 2. People have responded to him. I'd put him out there at 1 or 2. I don't know how many legends. I mean, obviously there's still 15 open spots. I don't know how many legends we necessarily will get. I mean, I could see, maybe a returning Randy Orton. Maybe again, they seem like seems like any legend that might have had any disgruntledness is gone away since with this new era, which is good. So it certainly opens things up, but I don't know. I could see at one surprise I could see, and I called this, not that I'm the only one, but I said this, last November or December.
LaBar exclusive.
I said this on Busted Open, I think in December. I said whoever wins the Joe Hendry Nick Nemeth match on TNA, that winner will be in the Rumble, the week later. So I do think I could see a Joe Hendry appear, and that was before obviously the official announcement of the partnership. So yeah, I think a Penta 1 or 2. I think a Joe Hendry could appear. I think maybe a Randy Orton surprise appearance and return. My original Final Four was this, but then I changed it. So my original was CM Punk, Seth Rollins, John Cena, Roman Reigns. The problem though that I see with that, those are 4 huge names. All 4 names are guys that you could realistically see win. But the problem is Punk, Rollins, Cena, Roman. They're all faces to an extent, and you have to have heels out there. You can't because then you're going to run in the risk of like we don't want Rumble in Pittsburgh in 2014. Mm-hmm. We don't want you don't want anybody if it's supposed to be somebody we're all happy about. You don't want to run any risk of the fans not being happy. So I take Roman out. I take him out, which I know is a big deal, but I take him out because I could see Solo, Jacob, Tom. I could see any of the people that have an issue with Roman breaking into the Rumble match at some point and eliminating him before the Final Four. So you can get him out of the Final Four and it not hurt Roman at all.
Looking forward to seeing who you replace him with, because I have an idea, because it might be mine. But go ahead. I take him out, and I also take out Rollins, because again we need to get some heels in there. He can be eliminated earlier, and so I'm going to replace Seth. I'm going to replace Seth with Drew. Got to have a heel in there. And I'm going to replace Roman. And like I said, same formula kind of with the women. You always got to have kind of like one person who you maybe not expected for the Final Four. And in this case, again, you need a heel, need some heat. Yeah. I'm going to replace Roman with Logan Paul.
You son of a.
So I have Punk.
There it is.
Drew, Cena, Logan Paul. I have Punk winning. And I've been on this for a few weeks. And then what I saw this past Monday just solidified it. But I have Punk winning for the reason of he got hurt in the Rumble match last year. You don't know how much longer you don't know how many more Rumbles he has. You don't know how many more Manias he has. He's never won the Rumble and he wants to. He's never main evented a Mania and he wants to. Clearly, again, this return to WWE has been good. He seems to be on great pace with Triple H creatively and everything. So you pull the trigger this year because you don't know how many more you have. Cena, of course, he could win, but they're already advertising Cena on this farewell tour for the Elimination Chamber. And I find it weird that he's got to appear at the Chamber. What does he do wrestling wise at the Chamber if he's already won Rumble?
He's gonna host it.
Yeah, right. So, so and then Roman, I know again that you can think about Rock stuff or whatever, but I mean, there's a lot of scenarios. But all in all, I can't sell myself more on anybody else other than Punk. Given like pull it now while he's healthy and while the fans are still cheering him, they have not wavered at all. Whether it's Drew, Seth, whomever can say things like, yeah, you left, yeah, you talked crap on this company, whatever, and the people just don't care. They still cheer.
They don't care. Yeah. Well, LaBar, that's pretty interesting, and I feel like Josh is going to share a very similar sentiment, and then I will conclude with a very similar sentiment to both of you. So, without further ado, Mr. Josh Isenberg, let me hear your final four. Who you got winning, and any interesting surprises or entrant numbers that you specifically think are going to happen in the men's Royal Rumble?
Yeah. So my final four I'll get to in just a second. LaBar definitely stole my thunder and almost the exact thought process.
You were the one that wanted LaBar to go first. So
I had this scrap of paper here. I'll take a picture and show you. I've been scratching things out left and right, but I don't think Penta's a bad idea to come in at number one or number two. But what we've seen in the past Royal Rumbles, for instance, I've done some statistics, obviously. Numbers 1 through 3 have won 9 times in the Royal Rumble. And other than that, number 20 through 30, which are obviously the more, important numbers later in the Rumble, they've won 24 times. So WWE's formula typically is somebody that you can realistically believe can win the Royal Rumble enters at number 1, number 2, or number 3. In my mind, last year was the perfect 1 and 2 with Jay and Jimmy. This year, I could see it being Jay and Sammy, because I think both of those guys are at a point in their careers. Jay is over like Rover. I'll steal that from LaBar, but he's even bigger now as an entrance. His entrance is almost trumping every other entrance in WWE, every other moment on Monday Night Raw, and that speaks volumes. So it's hard for me to think that they can't give him that number 1 or number 2 spot. And with Sami Zayn, they have that friendship. But sometimes, best friends become better enemies, and I think they can really put themselves together in the first handful of minutes in that Royal Rumble match together. So
that's a great call with Jay. That's a great call with Jay.
Yeah, so I think that's 1 and 2. But I wouldn't hate Penta being 3, 4, right next. So you give him 30 minutes in the ring, or a guy like a Braun Breaker who, can go 25, 30 minutes and give himself a very strong performance. My final four at first, before this juice box started, was actually Punk, Rollins, Roman, and Cena. But I also said the same thing in my mind. There's too many faces at the very end and not enough surprises. Last year they had Cody and Punk, obviously, in the final 2. The year before you had Gunther and Cody. So Gunther was obviously a very popular guy, but very much a heel. I get the idea of the Bloodline attacking Roman Reigns. I just don't know when that's going to happen. I don't think Roman comes out until the 20s, 23, 24 number. So I think Roman can get to the final 4, and then the Bloodline really distract everybody else Roman in the ring, so everybody else benefits from the Bloodline attacking Roman Reigns, which I think is great. You can get Roman out of there, focus on the final 3 that I would have, which would be CM Punk, Logan Paul again, and John Cena. And I do think it comes down to Cena and Punk. It's funny because you would say this 5 or 10 years ago, maybe a little bit, about 10 years ago, people would completely boo the hell out of John Cena. And I think that the people will be able to not boo Cena, but still 100% be behind CM Punk, because they have not wavered since he's been back. No matter who he's faced, no matter what the storyline is, no matter who he's in the ring with. I mean, hell, he was in the ring with Cody last week, and there was a few scattering of boos. Not a lot, but a few scattering of boos, more CM Punk chants. So I think CM Punk ultimately wins this. I think it is a perfect storm for WWE, because CM Punk wins, Cena goes to Elimination Chamber, can get his opportunity once again. Do I think he wins the Elimination Chamber and goes for a world title? Maybe, but at the same time, I think the marquee of him going for a 17th championship is what they're thinking of, but I wouldn't be surprised if Cena says, you know what, that's okay. It's not a problem. I can chase this in 4 or 5 months at SummerSlam. And even going back to what I believe Jay Hood said on Busted Open on Sunday with Justin, I'd rather see John Cena get 3 or 4 months of build-up to become champion. And I don't know if him being his 17th World Championship would be as big of a deal at a WrestleMania where the card is already stacked. And I know it's John Cena, but you can spotlight Cena's 17th championship opportunity potentially at a SummerSlam in New York. even at the end of the year. So a lot of options for Cena, but ultimately I got CM Punk winning this, eliminating John Cena, and finally getting his WrestleMania main event.
I could not disagree with you more on the John Cena WrestleMania title win and whether it should happen later on. Yeah, of course. That's what we're here for.
That's why this is your box juice.
Okay. Well, yeah, your straw's in here. LaBar's straw's in here. No, it's just
no crossing straws.
Never. That's why, the fact that it's December where he's saying, okay, this is it. That gives you that time only, because I doubt he's going to work into 2026 to get anything up and done, in that time. And I think to benefit of having SummerSlam at MetLife and it being, Cena's backyard, what have you, Mania 29 history, of course, with him beating The Rock. Why not have him as champion going into that show and everybody being behind him and whoever it could be by then, challenging him for that. Cena's backyard. It's going to be tough for, Cena to not lose. And I think maybe that's when you have him lose the title again. But WrestleMania 41, 20 years after WrestleMania 21, where Cena wins his first world championship, I think is the most apropos time to win his 17th. It's WrestleMania. It's the showcase of the Immortals. It's the granddaddy of them all. And I know John Cena would say to everybody in here, everybody in WWE, every fan in the world, look, I've done it all. I don't need to win the world title. WWE is going to do everything in their power to make sure that Cena doesn't take that way out, because he's been laying on his back for the last 2,000 days, and he should get his big moment in the sun. Just like, we talked about with Triple H. Triple H going to the Hall of Fame, it has to happen at some point. We've talked about this a lot, all three of us, in one way or the other. Cena being the guy with 17 world titles is best for WWE. They can bank on Cena. It's a guy they can trust. He's one of the top celebrities in the world, let alone movie or whatever. And it's a person you can really back and show this is the guy that, holds the flag for WWE forever, no matter what he does. So that's where I disagree with you, Josh. My Royal Rumble Final Four, I've been fluctuating on this, much like the stock market. But John Cena, CM Punk, Logan Paul, and Jey Uso. Now, I do enjoy the booking of Jey coming out first, maybe or second with his music, but the Royal Rumble does still have entrance music for the rest of these guys. It's not, it's not that they just come out randomly without music as they did in years past, where we, the buzzer goes off and who is it? And they take 10 seconds to come out and it's just the Warlord, Jay's going to get his entrance no matter what. And I know it would be a great moment to start. Hell, he could come in at number 1 or 2 and finish in the Final Four. Who knows? But I think regardless, I think you see Jey Uso in the Final Four, because I have suggested he could even win this damn thing. However, I think it's going to come down to Punk, Cena, a wonderful, wonderful mix of the guys that had one of the best Raw matches in history in 2013, a rivalry that I, wish could have gone longer back then. And, now it's about, you can't pass it up in the farewell tour. You have to have these guys interact at some point, and what better way to start here? So I have CM Punk winning this thing. Cena can be so close and say, damn, I couldn't do it. I failed again. Then maybe he gets that moment in the chamber to win that and then go to WrestleMania. I think we do see a Joe Hendry. I suggest maybe Joe Hendry is first or second, because what crazier way to start off the night by hearing that music. And we all know now, we joked about Abyss and how big of a waste it would be. No offense to him, but Joe Hendry, they know his music. Everybody knows his music. TNA, NXT, WWE, they all do. So I think having him first or second would be really beneficial. I also wouldn't be upset with Braun Breaker and Penta, considering they had a little interaction this past week to be number 1 and 2. But I don't know if Orton's ready to come back yet. I think that'd be an interesting surprise. I'm interested to see some of the legends that come out here, because as we get longer in the tooth in the world, it's interesting to see what legends, legends are going to be Ruthless Aggression legends now. So who knows who we could see on the docket. LaBar, do you think there's still room for a Nick Nemeth? And would he come back as Nick Nemeth and hold the TNA flag, or would it be Dolph Ziggler for one night only?
I've asked that question on Busted Open. I'm not really sure how that would work.
That'd be fascinating. If he comes out as Nick Nemeth, it'd be like, wow.
I don't think
really TNA.
I don't think in the men's rumble, I don't think you see more than one TNA guy. So I think if you're gonna put any TNA guy, you're gonna put the champ, right? So
what about so not a TNA guy, but what about Cardona?
I would love to see Matt Cardona.
That's another one. That's another one.
I mean, he's in my surprises. I just don't know. I've been wanting it to happen the last couple Rumbles, but I mean, he's at the top of his powers now. He's been on TNA recently.
That's another name question though. Like obviously he's done well for himself as Matt Cardona.
He'd come back as Cardona.
But he says Zack Ryder is dead, and I think if he was going to go to WWE, it would be based on them agreeing that Zack Ryder is a dead brand. I'm going to move forth as this. So if they can agree on that, then it'll be Matt Cardona. If they don't think money is there, then he's not going to come back at all.
Well, then let me put it this way. I mean, obviously, like Michael Cole's allowed to acknowledge things
more
than
sure.
Like then they have to quickly acknowledge in the 15 seconds they have of Cardona making his entrance, they have to acknowledge. Michael Cole has to do something like. He's gonna be on the commentary with
woo woo woo.
Well, he needs to be more transparent. So he's gonna have McAfee and Wade Barrett on commentary. Which, by the way, I think we can all agree McAfee will be in the Rumble. So who eliminates him?
Yeah.
But Cole has to be able to say.
Miz.
Yeah, no, I can see that. But Cole has to be able to say to Pat Wade, fans might know this guy and remember him as Zack Ryder, but he left here in 2000 whatever. And he has reinvented himself and took over the wrestling world outside of like they have to give some like they can't blatantly ignore that this guy was called Zack Ryder.
Yeah,
right. And Michael Cole's been given that carte blanche, whether it's his research or not. Whoever's telling him, or if he's finding it out himself, he's referencing all these other companies. Why not? Why couldn't he have the research done and be like, hey, he's been in. I don't know if he'd say GCW, but he would say TNA, and he'd say he's been around. And he's actually, like you said, reinvented himself, and now he's as Matt Cardona. Plus, the fans are going to go nuts regardless because they know who he is and what he looks like.
Yeah, I agree, and I think McAfee's definitely one. I mean, we've heard about Omos potentially coming back and being involved. You always need one of those big guys that everybody gangs up on and tosses over the rope. We had the Khali's, we had the Big Daddy V back in the day. I know LaBar's boy there, and like all these big guys that multiple people kind of need to toss over and give that awe moment, or even something like we saw with Beth Phoenix eliminating Great Khali. There's always that one shock moment of that big guy getting taken over. So I could see Omos coming back and doing that, and with McAfee coming in, whether it's a Miz, I mean even a Dom Mysterio, so we have Dom Mysterio, Damian Priest, a lot of these other not ancillary, but a lot of these other guys that haven't really been announced. So in my mind, I would say there's really only maybe 3 or 4 spots that could potentially be surprises. One, if I had to bank going on Hendry, maybe an Omos and a McAfee, and then maybe 1 or 2 more. But there's still a lot of guys that haven't been officially announced that you just imagine are going to be in that Royal Rumble match.
And I want to put this out there, and whether people are going to like it or not, it's going to draw numbers. Triple H has invited the very popular streamer iShowSpeed to stream during the Rumble backstage. And what better way to get literally the maximum amount of viewers on that stream and the Royal Rumble all at the same time, because the people watching his stream might not be wrestling fans, all of them, but they will watch his stream. And if Speed somehow gets into the Rumble, you don't think, if Logan Paul's out there and then Speed, who's been involved in some of the other spots, what if he comes out? What if he comes out and, I know Logan Paul had an interaction with KSI before too, and all these different streamers and different celebrities. If Speed's streaming live and then gets announced as a guy in the Rumble, even if it's just for a quick moment, how huge of a viral moment would that be? WWE loves to tout that stuff, and not on tout.
I could see Speed's doing that if he's live streaming and then an Omos. I would say Braun Strowman, but since they just had Braun get destroyed, they might want to sell that. I can see an Omos coming out and just tossing Speed into the second row.
Yeah.
While Speed holds his phone the entire time.
Well, that's the thing. You stream the entire time like Logan did when he did the frog splash to Roman, and I think you just maximize the viewing potential, even though there's going to be like upwards of 60,000 already in the building and how many watching around the world. So I don't know. I just think it's a moment that they clearly want to capitalize on, but I don't know to what extent necessarily. So we all think CM Punk's going to win this thing, huh?
Yep.
Yeah. If not now, when? I feel like that's been the sentiment this entire show. And if not now, when? why not join Pool Party Gaming and get your toes dipped in the juice box for a little bit of Royal Rumble fun? Free to play, free to win. All the links will be on my Twitter and Josh's as well. We'll be posting about it in the upcoming days to make sure you get your entries in. 25 multiple choice, different questions based on over, unders, when they're coming out, how long a match goes, all these fun things that you've done potentially in the past on other, pools or gambling type sites. But again, free to play. So no risk involved, but you can absolutely win surprises. And we'll have some more, knowledge on that as we get closer to the Rumble, as we're only a few days away. So before we close out today, Josh, any final words on the Royal Rumble as a whole? I know you're going to be there in attendance with your dad.
Yeah, I got a group of 7 of us going to be there for the weekend. I'm looking forward to it. Always my favorite time of the year is the road to WrestleMania in the Royal Rumble. And as always, Juice, I'll keep it short and sweet. I appreciate the time and always happy to quench my thirst with your juice box.
Absolutely, and you're always welcome in, and I'm very appreciative anytime you do come in. Justin, I know you're a big time guy now. Busted Open. It's been over a year. You do great work on Sundays, and I'm looking forward to hearing your reactions to the Royal Rumble. But I'm very thrilled that we had you in here for a little CSR reunion, as we like to do here on the Juice Box. Any final words on the Royal Rumble PLE? First time ever happening in February.
Yeah, no, I'm looking forward to it as always. A lot of good stuff as we talked about. Always enjoy chopping it up with you guys, having a little mini reunion. And for full reaction from me of whatever happens Saturday night at the Rumble, catch me Sunday morning on Busted Open Radio, Sirius XM channel 156 or the Sirius XM app, or you'll get an abbreviated half-hour version podcast later Sunday afternoon.
Absolutely, and I'm looking forward to that. Josh, I hope you have a great time in Indianapolis with your dad. Hopefully you can keep him at bay when Charlotte Flair makes her triumphant return. I'm sure he'll be thrilled. And Justin, I'm sure you're going to have a great time recapping the show on Sunday, as you always do, with your great knowledge there on Busted Open. So appreciate both you fellas hopping in the Juice Box. It's always a pleasure having the CSR guys coming back into the fray for any type of show. But these prediction shows are always real fun for me because you never know. And we've been saying it recently, it's so much better when wrestling is unpredictable. And what better unpredictable show than the Royal Rumble? So for Josh Isenberg, Justin LaBar, I am Juice Springsteen. This has been the Juice Box. Hope you guys enjoy the Royal Rumble this weekend and tune in next week for some more reaction from the Royal Rumble right here on the Juice Box. That was the Juice Box with Juice Springsteen. Make sure to subscribe to the Juice Box wherever you listen to podcasts.